is this is the only viable, real, lawful solution to combating what these bankers have done against the American people.
Okay. Well, I really appreciate the answers. That's awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, God bless you, sir. Have a good night. We are going to our final call, and it looks like that 770 number is back. Go ahead. You have the floor.
Hello?
Yes, go ahead.
Can you hear me?
I can.
Can you hear me?
I can. Can you hear me?
Oh, yes, sir. Yes, sir. How are you doing today?
I'm good. What can I do for you?
Well, I wanted to call in. I had a friend that met, I guess, a lady by the name of Donna. I'm here in Atlanta, Georgia, and
Okay.
I served our country. I served our country in the Navy. Had several family members who served in the military and other forces. I'm happy to be on the phone and wanted to encourage people, but at the same time, we've already switched over. How do we then cancel out the debt that we have when we're going into this new republic? And how would we begin to get paid when we're actually out doing, like, contract work, or if we're working for some company or we create a company?
That's a good question. Ken, I am super sorry I've answered so many questions when I know you're on the phone. Why don't you please answer that question, because this is a hard one, and it requires a much smarter guy than me.
Well, let me generalize it, because last week there was a couple of, well, let me just say it's kind of the answer is all-encompassing, and it's underwritten by the things you've been talking about this week, what was talked about last week. The bottom line is every situation, whether it's a debt, whether it's a court case, the man from Indiana and the lady who got arrested today, whether it's, I forget the man from Texas last week who was facing going into an IRS court issue, the other gentleman tonight who is going to deal with that. It all boils down to one basic thing, which is there is an existing contract. Now, the other thing is we know that those existing contracts were put forward without full disclosure. And we have the capacity to redraft that contract. And there is a universal solution in that phrase, because, first of all, everybody needs to understand that in 1966, which is a year after they took the silver out of circulation, Congress passed an act called the Revised Federal Tax Lien Registration Act. And in that act, there was a line that said, henceforward, all matters pertaining to taxation and monetary policy are under the purview of the Uniform Commercial Code. That means that everything relating to tax and money in the public is controlled by the rules of the UCC. Okay. And everything in the public is tax and money, okay, everything. So the rules of the UCC have been used against us because the rules are very simple. Everything in the public and everything in commerce is an offer to contract. Just like Kelby was saying, the judges use every possible trick to get you to recontract with them and grant them jurisdiction. So if he says one thing, the judge, says one thing to you, even if you're maintaining your position in your jurisdiction and you respond, you grant him jurisdiction. That's how subtle it is. So they use it against us, and we have the ability to use it in reverse. It's very simple. In commerce, you can only do two things. You can either stay in honor or you go into dishonor. In honor, you can accept a presentment or an offer to contract unconditionally. Just pay the bill. You can accept it conditionally, subject to something such as proof of claim. Or you can return it without dishonor if there's a defect on it, such as if somebody sends you a check and it doesn't have a signature on it, it has a defect. So anything other than that is a dishonor. Someone will go into dishonor by silence, by not responding, or by outright rejection. So if you have a debt if you have a court order, if you have a tax presentment, notice of deficiency, say from the IRS, if you send a properly constructed notice and demand or say a conditional acceptance subject to proof of claim, and you can list the proofs of claim. The gentleman earlier, I think also from Indiana, was talking about that 80-page document. Well, you could boil it down to 2 pages. Simply say, I conditionally accept your offer subject to proof of claim, proof that you disclose all material facts upon entering my entering into this contract, or any variation on that. And there is an abundant amount of information out on the web. If you just put the words commerce, acceptance, conditional acceptance, things like that. But when you send it, you have to send it and properly document it. You have to send it with a third-party public officer witness, which is a notary public, presentment, affidavit of service, and you have to send it by certified mail to prove that they got it. Then in commerce, you have to notice them of a fault, the same thing that in Tim Turner's negative averment process. It follows the rules of commerce. So, we don't have time here, and it's not the appropriate venue to go into extensive detail, but there's 2 fundamental issues here. One is, as a living man, I have the full right unconditionally to step into the republic, stand on the land, and be sovereign. But that thing that attaches to me, which is called the straw man, that I am considered to be attached to as the guarantor or the bonded surety, still has contracts, still has obligations. All of those obligations can be discharged, settled, and closed by a process of redrafting the contract, noticing them of fault in default, and dishonor once they do not respond because they're in dishonor, but you have to give them notice and an opportunity to cure. You go to fault, default, dishonor. Then you take the evidence of all of that as exhibits and you file a Uniform Commercial Code financing statement on the public record in the state and the county where you're the secured party and they are the debtor. And if you've done that, if you've done it properly, you can use that secured party position on just that redrafted contract to then settle and close the obligation, because you can then assign by UCC3, you can assign it as a tender by assignment for settlement and closure of the obligation. The thing is always, and has been in the past, enforcement. And the bottom line is our republic is our enforcement, because if you do all that and they still try to come after you, because what they are doing is holding the liability open while having received proper tender. If they do that, our enforcement then is to bring it before the grand jury. And that is the key. And I've been at this process. I've been involved with studying of the law and all these systems for 20 years. And until the republic became a reality as it has in the last 4 months, there was always the game of hide and seek. We could do all these things and properly document it, but we never had an absolute unconditional position of enforcement. My whole position and perspective on this has changed radically in the last 3 months, because now I'm starting to relax into the fact that we have the capacity to enforce. And it's basically what I just said and what I went over last week. And when those notices that Kelby referred to go out to every county and every sheriff's department and every police department in this country over the next couple of weeks, and then they continue to do things that are trespassing on our law and our superior authority, the grand juries are going to be very busy at first. But relatively soon, I think, before this year is out, the de facto systems are going to comport to our authority, because they're going to start seeing judges, potentially sheriffs, policemen, etc., actually being indicted and prosecuted in our courts, and actually paying a price for those indictments and prosecution, because they trespassed and transgressed on lawful authority. And when a few judges in every county are brought to task like that, believe me, the rest will be following the rules from that point forward. So I believe we're going to turn this around a lot faster than people think.
Okay, sir. A few weeks ago, I noticed, if I may, and I'll be very, very brief, and I understand that this has been a long call, and by the way, Happy New Year to everybody that's on the phone. But I have heard a lot of people who have been in fear of things, and I wanted to get in the call because I know several years ago God spoke about my spirit and said, Paul, you're not going to fear anything. It took me some years in understanding about certain things, and I understand that our power is in our love, and that's our protection.
Of course. But our power is also in our authority combined with that love and to stand in a righteous, centered, balanced position to execute law appropriately.
Yes, sir. Yes. Now, I understand.
Behind that?
Yeah, I understand that Tim Turner and this is not to really go any further into this, but David in the Bible, when he was not recognized by his fathers or 81 of his brothers, he was out tending the sheep. But as he was attending those sheep, he got victory over the lion and over the bear, which he had that in his hip pocket. But he was anxious, and he wanted to go and see what was going on with his brothers, that the father gave him a gift to go take to his brothers. But as he got there, he heard what was going on from the Philistines, yet he also paid attention to how the men that was paralyzed by these accusations that this giant was making. And nobody was wanting to go up against this particular giant. Not that we're talking about war, but it's just a simple fact that it was not the gift that he got, because when he asked what's going to happen here if I go to war against this Philistine, and what they said was your father's debt was going to be canceled, one. Two, you're going to get the daughter of the king. But before any of that came into play, what he recognized was the people that was paralyzed. The reason why he went in there in that battle, and because he had already had one of these other battles for sheep, he wanted to battle against the giant, and he won because he believed in God, Jehovah. And that took him into the battle, but he did it for the people that was paralyzed. But once he went in there and cut the head off that giant, and we're not talking about the person, we're just talking about this particular head that was controlling the body, no longer could control that body no more. It was ended. And I feel that there's people that will be able to stand up without fear, because fear has got to go. That's what brought the storm when Jesus told the disciples to go to the other side, was their fear, because he wasn't there with them and they had to go out and travel on their own. It was the fear that brought them. But there was one person in that boat that didn't have fear. And the reason that Jesus walked that water, and because he came about on the fourth watch, because I'm in the military, and we had to have watches for 3 hours. That potentially said that he was praying for 12 hours. Well, he had 3 other situations he had to deal with besides what they were dealing with. When he came walking on the water, I believe that when Peter prayed, because how I know that he prayed and how I know Peter's the one that called him out of the water is because he asked a question to him when he came up. Everybody else was scared. They thought that it was a spirit that was going to walk past them. But he said, if you're in Christ, bid me to come. In other words, if I called you out here, I prayed for you to come out here. If you are here to answer my prayer, then tell me to come on this water. If I walk this water, I know you answer my prayer. And I think that we need to get rid of this fear, because there's other people's lives at stake. I don't care if you're in the church or wherever the case may be. I don't care if they're out in the world, if they're homeless, whatever the case may be, because I cannot stand to see people hurt. If I can give everything I got to not see people hurt, or even take the place of somebody so they wouldn't hurt, that's what I do, because that's what God built in me. So I just want to encourage everybody. Huh? Go ahead.
Yeah. No, I was just going to say
I just want to encourage everybody on that we're moving forward, and that I appreciate what Tim Turner and everybody's doing, and I'm ready to come on board and become a ranger and do whatever I need to do, whatever services that I need to help out any area, because it took me 10 years to help out my pastor at his church, and I finally got in there, started helping him do different things. So I'm a person who comes in and is willing to help. I give everything I have, so I'm here.
Well,
Thank you,
I'm-
sir.